Hi everybody and welcome to CMX London. It is absolute pleasure to see you here with us today, and we are very excited with the event that we've got for you. So hope everything's all right. Please continue in the chat to let us know who you are and where you're logging in from and what communities you're leading. Outside the window, just having a look, it's a little bit cloudy here in East London. So hopefully some of you have got the sun shining on you where you are. So yeah, this is a CMX Connect virtual event. And so the aim of CMX is to help community professionals. So I'm just going to move on. We've got some CMX Virtual Connect guidelines I just want to show with you. So please, if in group chat, this is not relevant for today, but in group chat in general, make sure your camera is turning on. Next month, that's a great one to know. Do close down any distracting applications. I'm the same. I totally have to do that too. Do use the chat box. The chat box is there to ask questions and to leave comments throughout the session, and we'd love to hear from you, so please do. And if you've got a second just to grab your favourite snack or drink, that'd be fantastic. Lovely. So, CMX Connect. So this is a CMX Connect event, and we are CMX Connect London. So we're part of an initiative of bringing together community professionals around the world in different parts of the world, and we run the London UK chapter. There are over 60 chapters of CMX Connect now in multiple different places, and it's always a pleasure during our virtual connects to see people from other countries and from other cities too. But yeah, you're very welcome. Everybody is welcome in London. So. That's great. You can learn out more about the CMX Connect program at the events.cmx.hub.com website. So you feel free to go there later. CMX, the organisation, is aimed to help community professionals to thrive. And so the CMX Connect program, the three goals that we have are to connect. If you meet just one great person today, then that's fantastic. And to learn, that's the second goal. So to get one actionable thing that you can implement right now to help you lead your community and to help you support your community members. And the third aim is to advocate, so to grow the community industry so that we can champion each other and we can upskill and we can learn from each other and we can take the industry itself to the next level. And so today's speaker and topic, I'm absolutely delighted. I'll be introducing him shortly. Absolutely delighted to introduce Richard Millington, who is the founder of Feverbee and is the author of 3 community management books. And he'll be talking to us today about taking your community skills to the next level. So I'm just going to stop sharing my slides. If you want to tweet today, please do tweet #CMX London. We'd love to see your tweets coming in. While I'm here, I just want to introduce the other CMX London hosts that we have. So there's me, I'm Serena, I oversee the community team at Alzheimer's Society, a health non-profit in the UK. And we've got Michelle Sims here, who is the global community lead for Finimize in London. And let me just check in the attendees. Well, we did have an announcement to make. We'd asked recently if anybody in the CMX London community would be interested in joining us and in becoming the third amigo, the third CMX London host. And we have Lauren Gross here today. She's in the attendees list, so absolutely delighted to officially introduce Lauren as our third host. We'll be meeting her next time, our next CMX London event. So I think that's it from me. I just, as I say, really excited to have Richard Millington here today. I've learned so much from Richard over the years, and I just want to show you one thing on my legitimately on my community management learning, library. This is sitting there proud alongside a couple of other fantastic books. If you haven't already bought Richard's first 2 books, rush out right now and buy them, and we'll be telling you about the third one later. So yeah, absolute pleasure to have Richard with us. He's going to be talking to us about taking your community skills to the next level, and I'll be handing over to him now. Richard.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you to both you and Michelle and Nancy, who's no longer working on this, for just the incredible work you've done to get this up and running. Like, I can't imagine how much time you put into it. And as a volunteer thing, it's incredible. So thank you for that. Let me share my screen so we can get going. And hello, everyone else. And thank you for joining us from all around the world as well. I didn't know we were expecting this many when we began, but let me share my screen and make sure I can see. That seems to be okay. Awesome. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It's exciting to have this opportunity today to work with you over the next hour. Also, it's exciting to do a session like this at a convenient time in the UK. Almost all of the webinars and events I've done are at like 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. in the UK. So finally doing it at this time feels kind of good. What we're going to be talking about today is how you upgrade your community skills. I think a lot of the discussion in the community space, a lot of the events and activities that we talk about are very much at the high level, of big visions, the big strategies, and all that stuff is really important. But I also want to talk about the minutiae, going as deep as you can go into the most practical, the most tangible, the most specific things you can do right now today to be better at engaging members in your community. And you're going to get a couple of things at the end of the session. One, you'll get a free chapter from my upcoming book. You'll get access to our accelerator tool, access to Feedbe experts, free download of my first book, which the reader was showing before, community roadmap workbook as well, and a template we use for analyzing the audience. So you're going to get all these 6 things by the end of this session today. So let's dive into things and create some of the context behind this. I think the key point I want to make at the beginning here is that despite of whatever technology you use, whatever people you have around you, whatever other activities are going on, eventually everything that the community relies upon, all the success of the community rests upon you and your skills. You can have the most amazing team around you possible. You can have the best technology possible, but ultimately, if you can't engage members, you're not going to make the community a success. You are the driver of your community, and everything else can help. Fundamentally, you need the skills to make that community thrive. One of the things we've been doing over the last year or so is benchmarking different online communities, different online community managers, rather, people that go through our training course, people that go through the clients that we work with, people that attend our workshops. And very early on, just try to get them to benchmark themselves, or we can do it for them. We're answering a number of questions. If you go to feedbe.com/accelerate at the end of this, where you can see how that works, and try to get a sense of where they're at today. And once we have this benchmark in place, then we can start systematically going through a process to increase these benchmarks, targeting really specific skills at a time, and then how we can increase them. And what we're going to be looking at today is specifically engagement. And not even all engagement, because that's quite a broad topic, but we're going to drill down into a couple of very specific things. If you've been in the community space for a while, you might find this a bit one-on-one, but hopefully it can act as a great refresher for you. If you're relatively new, then hopefully you can get a great start in how you're going to engage your members. Let me ask you a question to begin with. What do community professionals spend most of their time doing? Take maybe 30 seconds and just put your answer in the chat box now. What do community professionals spend most of their time doing? I'm going to give you about 20 seconds. Just put it in the chat box. Think about your work today. You have creating content, engagement, reading the community, analysis, engagement, seeing trends, engagement, content creation, engagement. Well, okay, there's a lot of answers there. Reading and replying, educating, community. Okay, there's a lot of great answers here. What I think we spend most of our time doing, and if you look at the data, is communicating. If you look at what the Community Roundtable report a couple of years ago revealed, what people spend most of their time doing is engagement. When you look at how people break down their day and how they manage a community, they spend almost all of their time communicating. Very often when we work with a new client, one of the first things we get the community manager or the community team to do is to start benchmarking and making a list of everything that they're doing in a given week. What are all the different initiatives that they're working on in a given week? And one recent example was this. What do you notice about all these activities here? Again, it's not a trick question. You can just put your answer in the chat box if you like. What do you notice about all these activities here today? It's a lot. Yeah, that's one thing. It's way too many. Last week in CMX Spark, I looked at the process we go through to reduce these to a core few. But what else do you notice about them? It's tactical. Yeah, it's tactical. A lot of reactivity. Yes, Annie, yes. Different ways of communication. Almost all the things here are about communicating with members. And even some of the ones that aren't specifically that direct communication, they still have very strong elements of communication as part of this. And even some of these, you can think, well, there's some elements of communication going on here. And we never spend much time thinking about how do we get better at communicating in really specific ways. How do we get better at communicating? And here's a question for you. How highly would you rate your community skills today? Let's just say on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you rate your communication skills today? You can put your answer in the chat box. And if you're feeling shy, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to put an answer if you don't want to. But you can just put your answer in the chat box. So we have Oliver says 6, Clement says 4, Michelle 7, Emily 3. You folks are really honest. I think there might be more of a British thing. Honestly, most of the people I work with in the USA, and they always say 7 or 8. So I'm very proud of how honest most of you are. 5, Catherine 5, Adele 6, 7. By the way, no offense to people in the USA. Toby says 8, Laura says 6. Okay, so slightly lower than what I would typically expect. Typically, like I said, when we do this, the most common answer is 7 or 7 or 8. And I think it raises the question, are you as good a communicator as what you think you are? And if you are, how would you even know? Because there's many different things that are present in being a good communicator. You know, Barack Obama, I think we can all agree, was a great communicator. But why was that? It wasn't just the way he speaks. There's the metaphors, the rhythms, and the tools that he uses when he communicates. You've got Hans Rosling on the left, who sadly passed away a year or so ago. Absolutely amazing communicator in explaining really, really complex issues in really simple ways. We know that a lot of job descriptions for online community roles will say, we want a good communicator, but they're never really that clear on what a good communicator, what being a good communicator actually means. So we have a very simple definition for that. It's not just the ability to write an email or blog post or text messages or whatever without making grammar mistakes or spelling mistakes. In fact, sometimes those mistakes even make you seem more authentic. I wouldn't recommend it, but every now and then, you don't really judge people if they make a mistake in email. I think being a good communicator is someone who can consistently persuade members or an audience to make beneficial contributions to a community. Someone who can take an audience and use tools that are proven to work to consistently persuade members to make beneficial contributions to a community. And if we start breaking down what these kinds of communications look like, we can break this down to things that are high reach and low reach, and things that are high frequency and things that are low frequency. And by the way, this is not a comprehensive list, so don't judge me if some of the things you're working on aren't included in this. But we can start looking at all the tools available to us and start thinking, we spend a lot of time perhaps writing blog posts or content or newsletters that reach a huge number of people. We spend a lot of time replying to posts, replying to direct messages, replying to emails. Things have relatively low reach. They don't reach as many people in terms of how big the community is, but you do them a lot. And then we have things that kind of low frequency, but they have high reach. Things like major announcements, things like updating the website copy, things like hosting major events. And then we have things that are low reach and low frequency, which we generally don't spend too much time doing. Things like dispute resolution, custom messages, and things like that. And what I'm going to be spending most of my time today is that top 2. The things that you spend a lot of time doing, how we can improve them. Because we do try to benchmark engagement skills via a very specific framework. And the framework we use comes from looking at moderation firms, looking at what members respond to, and looking at how often people find a response helpful or not. So a few years ago, we were working with a major tech brand, and they had a moderation team, no real way of deciding or knowing if they were doing a good job in their responses. So the framework we've been using is this, is when we're looking at what typifies a great response, we're looking at these 5 factors here. How personal it is to the recipient, how friendly or empathetic that response is, how much knowledge is contained within that response, whether that response resolved the question or the problem, and then how much influence do you feel you gave that person? And then based upon these things, and I'll share this after the presentation so you don't have to try and take notes on all these kind of things, but based upon these 5 things, we start benchmarking how good people are doing today. And very recently, with a recent client, this was the benchmarks we had. When we started looking at how they were replying, how their super users were replying, this was a benchmark that we had. And this is also an update on the benchmark over the past year that we did for them. And you can see there's some improvement here in terms of knowledge and resolution. They're getting better at giving people useful information, but they're not getting better really at delivering the level of empathy and the friendliness and the personalization that members want. They're not really delivering the kind of value that people want when they engage in the community, instead of just a customer support channel. And so often when we benchmark people, when we take a sample of their last 5 responses and we start looking at how good they are on this benchmark back here, on this benchmark here, we find that they're not at a 7 out of 10 at all. We typically find they're either at level 1 or 2, level maybe 2 and 2 and a bit, but they're very rarely at the world-class level. And what we want to do today is see how we can improve in just a couple of ways to get closer to that level. And we're also going to look at the long-form content as well. One of the myths I think that's out there is that people are far more engaged and responsive to our content than they actually are. Most of the emails you send out to your community go into a spam filter like this. This is mine from just the other day. And if you look at this, what do you notice? Are any of these messages now persuasive to you? Again, you can type in the chat box at any time. Are any of these messages things that you're going to open? Even if you've signed up to these kinds of communities, even if you've signed up to these things, and honestly, for some of these, I'm not sure I have, but even if you've signed up to some of these things, are they persuasive? Are you even going to open the email on most of these things? I'm willing to bet that for most of you, the answer is no. But yet, very often, because we've written the email, we think it's going to have a bigger impact on what we think. So most communications that go out there today are simply not persuasive. And if you look at how a great community manager does compared to an average one, you see a big difference. So we've been working with Okta for a couple of years now. One of the things we've noticed is that when a typical engineer or customer support person has to answer a question, their responses aren't that great. If you look at these responses on the left here from Okta to questions, what do you notice about them? Are they good? Are they bad? How would you benchmark these responses here? Take just a second and put your answer in chat. What do we think? Robotic, yes. Clinical, yes. Anything else? Not personal, very impersonal, not personal. I think it's customer support, right? This isn't building a community. It's not going to make the recipient feel any better about themselves. It's not going to make them feel like they want to engage more in the community. It's not going to do anything than give that person information. And there's nothing wrong with information, but it's just a fraction of what they can do. Now let's see what happens when our client, Phoebe, comes into this community. What do you notice about this response? What do you notice? What specific things is Phoebe doing here? It's personal, yes. It's empathetic, yes. A lot of empathy. Anything else? Let's be more specific. Instead of just empathy, what specifically makes it an empathetic response? Friendly, informative, warm, personal, customized, friendly, emojis, yeah. Relates to the person, tells a story, connects members. Yes, all these things are great. Personal experience, reflecting back to the need. In my opinion, it's a bit long. That's fair. I disagree, but it's fair. Use information about the person. Yes, it starts healing all of the things in that benchmark that we talked about before. It gets other people more engaged. It makes that person, if they have another question, to want to ask it within that community. And it doesn't take a lot of extra time to write a response like this, just to write a customer support style response. It's just still giving information. It's just a few extra sentences. But when you do this, and you do this consistently, you have a tremendous impact upon the quality of communities. You have a tremendous impact on whether someone is likely to participate in that community again. That's why instead of just looking at the macro level, we really want to dive into the micro level in how we continue building a community. Even in most communities, most communications are really poor. If you've gone through our training courses like Nick and a few others have, you've seen a few examples of this before. But take a look at a lot of the responses that are out there today. Let's look at I think this is the Vimeo community. Yeah. You don't really need to know much about the background of this. But what do you think about this response here? What would a better response look like to this? You can take just a few seconds and put your answer in chat. What would a better response look like to this? If you posted an idea in this community and someone responded like this, how would you feel? And let's ignore the fact that they're responding like 4 years after this. How would you feel about a response like this? Yep, they need to tag the person and acknowledge what they said. It feels closed. They're buying time, definitely brushed off, templated. Yep, not enough information. Yeah, yep, you wouldn't post another new idea. Why not arrange an opportunity for people to comment on this notification? Yep, all these things are terrific. Yeah. And I think what happens is that when we respond to a post in a community, I think we just get too busy and so in a mindset of we have all these questions to respond to that we often don't spend enough time thinking about how we respond even better. Like Nick's saying, there's no next steps here. What are the next steps? Is this it? Is this the end of the debate? Why would you even post this? It just does more harm than good. Well, let's take another response. Again, I'm putting a few responses at random here. The AMD online community. You don't really need to know what the report was, but what do you think about this response here? Again, you don't even need to know what the question is to have some thoughts and feelings about this response, right? A bit cold. Thomas says it's fine for the context. Who agrees with him? Darren asked if it's even a real person. I hope so. Jade says investigation is an intense word. Meh, sounds like copy and paste, bland, it's automatic. Not everyone knows what source code is. Feels like a lot of energy to respond. Yeah, it doesn't feel warm. It feels cold. It doesn't feel like they're building a community. It doesn't feel like an effective response. If we compared it to what Phoebe was saying earlier, where it's a lot more empathy, where they mention the person, they put in these really basic things in place, and the contribution and the participation is a lot better, and it feels a lot warmer and friendlier, and the kind of community that you want to engage with. We want to spend a lot of time looking at what good looks like, because I think once we know what good looks like, it becomes a lot easier to implement in our processes. If we're managing a community team, if we have a moderation team that works for us, even if we are just a person who is tasked with engaging with people at the one-to-one level, we can do very specific things using great examples to improve our communities. So my favorite person in the whole world that does this, and if you've been following my work a while, you'll be frustrated because I use this example all the time, is Colleen Young at the Mayo Clinic. So Colleen Young, I think, took our course back in 2016 or so. And since then, the work she's done at the Mayo Clinic is fantastic. But again, you don't need to know what the problem is here or what the question is, but just take a second at this response. What specifically is Colleen Young doing here? What do you think of this response here today? I really do think that Colleen Young is possibly the best in the world at what she does here. And I'll explain why in just a second. What she did, she's connecting people. Yes, Catherine and Emily. She's engaging, decentering herself, connecting members. Let's try to be more specific. Instead of just engaging and empathetic, why is it empathetic? Why is it engaging? Let's try and be really specific in what she's doing. She sounds like a person. Okay, I agree, but how? What specifically is she doing here? Connecting and facilitating, great. Nick, yeah, she's welcoming. She's helping them to connect with others, expanding their network, providing extra information, recommending the content as well. Yeah, in tune with the needs of members. Wow, these responses are fantastic. Thanks, everyone. Helping people to connect with others, addressing directly to a user, using language that's commonly used. Yes, that's a great one. A lot of people use very formal, very technical language, and in technical communities, that's okay. But very often it doesn't need to be the place. It's not formal at all. Giving impulses. Oh yeah, she's making them feel heard by recognizing that they need and with the need, inviting updates. She invites a follow-up. Yeah, I think we all get it. Like there's some very specific things. First, at the very beginning, she's mentioning the person for a personal response. Even just doing this, you know that they're responding to you as an individual and not just a question. At the most primitive level, at the most core level, this is one very simple thing that a lot of us can do better today. Next, she's noticed it's their first contribution to the community. Think about the system that might have to be in place for her to do that. Either she can see when they make a post, it's their first post, which she can in this community, or if your platform doesn't offer that, you can think about what you can do to create the system for that. Second, she specifically references the particulars of their question first before trying to resolve it. This shows again that they're being heard. Next, she tags in other people to respond. What does that feel like? If you've been tagged in to respond to a question, how do you feel? You can put your answer in the chat box. But if you've been tagged in to respond to a question, how do you feel? Valued, empowered, important, valued. Yeah, these are great responses. Empowered, yeah. Respected, yeah. So not only is she making this member feel good about themselves, she's making 5 or 6 other members feel good about themselves. And then she is providing a link to useful information. The only thing I might change about this is to take the information from the link and put it in the answer, but she's providing a link to useful information in another discussion, again, reviving that other discussion. And then she's asking for a second post. She's asking for an update. She wants that update. This is an incredible thing to do. And I know a lot of people that can do that once. A lot of people can do it twice. Colleen has done that 7,000 times. That is an incredible number of times to be doing these things. She's done this 7,000 times. Think about the effort that takes. So we know what makes responses great. The speed of response matters, of course it does. We always want to have a good speed of response. We want to make sure people are getting the kind of answer that they want as quickly as possible. And we want to be designing a system so people can get a quick response. Some of the data that I haven't shared here is that we know that if someone makes their first post within a community and they don't get a good quick response, they never participate. It's a good idea to figure out a system, even if you're just running an SQL query in the background of the community, to figure out who's new on each day and see if they've made their first post. It's a good idea to make sure that when someone does make their first post, they get a quick response. Elsewhere, I've shared some data about how quickly a response has to be. And I think it's something like, if you respond within the first 24 hours, I think there's a 50% or 58% chance that someone will respond again. After 48 or 60 or 72 hours, that starts to really drop to 30% and to 20%. So the speed of response really matters. The personal welcome is important. Tagging in others is important. Sharing relevant information is important. Soliciting that follow-up is important. None of these things cost us a penny. You don't have to change your platform. You don't have to do any of these wacky things. And if you look up the case study we posted on Mayo Clinic, you look up the Fever Bee and Mayo Clinic in a search engine, You can see some of the work we did with them, but most of it was just Colleen doing very core community skills to bring an entire community back to life and make it thrive. And there's huge mileage, not just in improving the technology or strategies and in those things, but just doing the very basic things, the things that we take for granted, the things that we naturally assume that we're good at, just doing these very basic things a lot better. Let's go through another example. A few years ago, we were working with the Facebook community. And they had a help community there, and I think it's still going in some form. But look at the kind of responses that they used to give. What do you think of this response here? Is it good? Is it bad? Do you like it? Do you not like it? What do you like or not like about it? Take maybe 30 seconds just to read through it and highlight what you like and don't like about it. It's a template. Yes, it is. More or less. I mean, it's more or less a template response. It's helpful, but only to a certain extent. Why? Reads like an email, then that to me puts me off. Quite formal, only going so far, generic. As a matter of fact, missing the point, doesn't acknowledge the issue. Could be a bot. It's not a bot. I mean, it comes off a little bit like a bot, but it's not a bot. How would you rate this? Let's say on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate a response like this? 2, 3, 2.5. 2, yeah, I'd say about a 2, possibly a 3, so maybe 2, 2.5. By the way, I think giving a 2.5 rating when it's on a scale of 1 to 5 is cheating a bit. But yeah, 2 or 3 seems about right. I mean, it's not bad. It gives information, but it's cold. What can we do better here? What would you do to improve a response like this? If this was you, if you had a response like this, if you were in this kind of moderation role, what would you do better? Try and be really specific. Ilka, I think I'm saying your name right. Sorry if not. Ilka says, ask a question, engage with the poster. Thomas, make it funny. Interesting. Empathize. Thank Philip for reaching out and showing some empathy about the situation he's going through. Good. I'd reply and refer to the humor about his hammer. We'll come to that in a second. Acknowledge the user's frustration and first provide some guidance. Add empathy, personalize, not defer to another way of reporting problems, be more friendly. Yeah, I mean, I think if this were us and the kind of feedback that we would give would be to change it a little bit. It doesn't need to be this formal. If we can see what the question is, we can start adapting it. So first, we have hi Philip, or maybe we'd mention Philip if that was part of the platform. We can say, sorry to hear you're having trouble with the issue. I can imagine that it's fiddly and frustrating. So first we're empathizing with the person. However, now we know there's human in there, we're reflecting that. I wouldn't resort to the hammer just yet. We don't think it's get messy. It's not the funniest joke I've ever made, to be honest, but it reflects the humor that's in there. I mean, some people would argue it is the funniest joke I've made, but that's another matter. If both GoPro and Quick update is fine, you might also want to update to the latest version of the internet browser and update Flash 2, and then ask a question to solicit more information. So hopefully we can see here that there's very specific things. And by the way, this is just my example. You can probably come up with much better examples to this, but you get the point, right? How you can update things to be warmer, be better, and make the person feel better about participating in that community. If they have another problem, you want them to come to the community to get answers. And so the better you respond to people, the more they're going to do that and the more engagement that you're going to have. Joanna says, could you end with something like, let me know how you get on? Yeah, I mean, that would have been an improvement in this response for sure. Yeah, you have a more friendly experience. Let's try another example from Facebook as well. What do you think about this one? What would you, actually, let's do this in 2 different ways. 1, how would you rate this response today on a scale of 1 to 5? And let's stop doing the 2.5s or the 2.3s or the 2.75s or the 4.849s, just a whole number, 1 to 5. How would you benchmark this today? And then what would you improve? Rating scale of 1 to 5, a whole number. There's no cheating this time. 2, 2, 2. Seems pretty consistent on the 2s here. Does anyone dare to be different? 2, 2. Debbie, thank you. 1. Serena says 1. Yeah, I personally would probably give it a 2. I mean, it's direct and short at least. So I think 2 would probably be where I'd go. How would you respond? How can you deliver an even better response than this? What would you do? Take maybe 30 seconds just to respond to this. What would you do here to improve this? Ilka said, for starters, at least copy and paste the instruction on the link. Yeah, there's actually some good data on this where if you put the answer within the response, people are more satisfied than if you simply link to the answer. But it depends on how big that response has to be. So you have to balance that consideration. Lana says more empathy. More empathy, yeah, I agree, but let's try and be more specific. What specific words would you use? Let's try and be as specific as possible. Wish them luck at the end. Wish them luck at the end. Yeah, can you post key information from the article? Share a link to the profile so we can look at it. No, I don't think you need to look at the profile of the member for this. Write down the steps. Debbie says, be kind, may be anxious about the duplication. Lauren says, I'm sorry to hear. Yep, I offer assistance if you run into trouble, need extra help. Yep, I understand this may be a distressing experience. Yeah, yeah, pretty good. Try and stay away from cliches a little bit, but these are generally good. Let them know that it will get sorted. Yeah, let me highlight very specifically what the next steps are. Anyone else? Giving assurance, key actions that are done, what happens, follow up. Yeah. One of the things I definitely try to do, especially on this session and people that take our courses and elsewhere, is really try and be specific. It's one thing to say be friendly. It's another thing to say these are the specific things that are friendly and most people will find friendly. And I want to keep pushing towards that. But yeah, I think we get the idea. I mean, you can have something very specific here. Hi, I'm really sorry this happened to you. Just one caveat with using the word sorry here. If there's a legal matter, then apologizing can be a risky thing to do. So just be aware of that. You know, and then we can try to help the duplicated account that were made of you. Notice here the terms and the phrases that the poster is using and what the responder is using. The poster is using very specific terms. It is a duplicate of my account, but the responder is responding in a way, an account that's pretending to be you. And it's always a good idea to match up the words that the poster is using in your own response. The first step is to report the duplicate account by following the steps in our help center, and then list those steps, or even give them the link to read. But generally, depending upon how long it is, you probably want to drop this in. And then just let me know if you need my help or provide me with an update. Again, you can provide your own much better responses to this, but you get the idea, I think. Like, we can do a lot better in a lot of the messages we send out. I'll take another one. This is to come up all the time. People would make a post in the community and someone else would reply. If they included some personal information, they would get a response like this. If you received a response like this, how would you feel? Imagine you posted something and you received a response like this. How would you feel? Think about just the emotion of it. Would you post in this community ever again? Yes, is it a response? There's no context. It's you'd be offended, excluded, told off. Yep. Never post again. Yeah, you do feel like you're told off. Imagine when you open a message, the very first thing that you see is your post has been removed. I mean, that's a really severe thing to put in the first response, isn't it? So what can we do better about this? One of the things we were trying to do when we first discussed this workshop was to have breakout groups. But I think with the number of people here today, we've got over 100, that became a little bit more difficult. So it's going to be a working session. So yeah, if you can participate, that really helps. So what would you do? Imagine someone has included some personal information here. How would you respond? How can we improve this? Lina says, what personal information did I share? More details would be nice. Yeah, that's a good point. The only thing I would add to that is that if people do this a lot, like for the sheer scale in a lot of communities, you need a template response. So you have to, that's a consideration here. But you're right. If it's more of a smaller community, you definitely can be specific about what personal information they included. How would we improve a response like this? Start with sorry. Yep, educate the user. Agnes says, instead of remove it, we could send a message saying, hi, we would recommend that you consider removing personal information. Yeah, I kind of agree with you, but I think for certain kinds of communities, for legal reasons, you have to remove things as quickly as possible. But I get what you're saying. Yeah, Riaz, customize it, personalize the greeting. Yep, share why it's important. Start with saying what happened, share with the guidelines, let them know they can answer any question. Yeah, I think we can work on responses like this so they don't have to be as harsh, right? So we can still be more warm and friendly. So this would be my template response to this, which would be to encourage the person who asked the question in the first place. We don't want to be discouraging people that ask questions in our community. We want to be encouraging them. So we begin with great question. But would you mind reposting it about any of your private information, especially things like email address, phone number, credit card information, images of your driver's license and passport? In the wrong hands, people could do bad things with your information. But don't worry, we've got your back. We've hidden the old posts for you. Just publish the post again about any private details and we'll do our best to get an answer. Now, I'm not saying this is the best response, but I think it's a lot better, right? I mean, this might not be the ideal response. There's probably things that you can do a lot better, but you can take almost any communication and then start improving it just by using the principles that we've been using here. What else could we do? I mean, what do you think of this response, and could you even improve upon it? And even the language we use. I mean, we don't want to say a post is being removed. We want to say it's being hidden. We want to highlight why it's being hidden, that we're protecting them. We want to be very clear about why we're doing these specific things. We want to encourage them again. It doesn't have to be such a formal situation in every single post. Things have gone really quiet in the chat really fast. All right, what do we have? Harriet, at the end, we could encourage them to continue posting. Yep, I like that. Put in the super user's name or the user's name. Yeah, we can do. The only reason I didn't, Nick, is because this is going to be more of an automated response. But yeah, if it's one-to-one, for sure. Provide a link to safety guidance. Yep. Yeah, providing a link to personal safety would be even better. Yeah, like Leonard's saying, there's a big difference between saying you broke the rules, so we're removing your post, and oh, you made a slight mistake, so we've got your back. I think just being warmer and friendlier is something that we can always do. So here's a question for you, and you can take maybe 30 seconds. How would you benchmark your last 5 posts in your community, whichever community that you belong to? If you're using a scale like this to respond, how would you benchmark yourself today? Toby, yes, the message isn't that personal because it covers a whole range of things. So you can use it in multiple situations. Yeah, but it's not so much about the post, but about the approach to the post. So how would you benchmark yourself today based upon what level 1 to 2? Thanks. Thomas is 2 to 3. I'm still too formal. Yeah, being formal isn't necessarily bad. I mean, in certain kinds of technical online communities, being formal is great. But you can still be a little bit less formal and a little bit more empathetic. There's a big difference between, say, the SAP online community and then maybe the Sephora online community. There's different levels of formality that's acceptable to each, and it's about finding the right balance between them. 2 to 3, 3. I wonder if any of your level has changed since you first gave your rating at the beginning. Okay, most of you would still be a 6 out of 10, I'm guessing, if you're 3 out of 5. But hopefully you've got some very specific things you can think about to improve. Ultimately here, every single interaction we have is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to increase understanding about our communities. It's an opportunity to make a member feel better about themselves. It's an opportunity to make sure that when someone visits the community, they feel warmer and better, not just about the community, but about the organization as well. And that's really something that we can do in every single interaction. And it's not just us. We can hold super users accountable to this kind of standard. We can hold, and you can adapt this to your own situation and what makes sense to you. But there's a great thing that you can do in every single interaction you have to make people feel better about themselves and their community. Your super users, your staff, you can train people up in these things. You can benchmark on these things. You can really help people get a lot better at engaging in their community by following these kinds of principles. The other thing I want to talk about in the time we have left is simplifying your messages, particularly your long form messages. There are way too many communications we're sending out today that are ineffective, that don't target the emotion, and are trying to cover so many things at once that we don't include any one particular thing. So simplifying your message, or to be more specific, take what you want to say and then really chisel it down to the core thing. It's such an important skill to do. Every announcement, every blog post, everything that you want to say, even the whole positioning of your community has to be related to a single core message, because people don't generally have the ability to remember more than that. So we want to think about what is the persuasive appeal in any announcement, any email, any newsletter, anything we send out that's going to really resonate with the audience. Because ultimately, we only get to occupy just one spot in someone's mind. When we think of a community, we usually relate it to a very particular type of standard. And it can usually relate to one of these things. And they're often at opposite ends of the scale. One of the most remarkable things when we're positioning a community and when we're developing a community is how we often try to do all the things at once, even the things that are clearly at the opposite scale from one another. And a big part of developing a community, especially one that thrives, is figuring out where on this scale you're going to be. Because yes, you can try and do more than one, and some communities can just about do it, but especially if you're just getting off the ground, it's about picking the one that is the best for you. And this by far isn't a comprehensive list. So exclusive and diverse often are opposite ends of the spectrum. You're going to have a community that's focused on a particular topic or comprehensive to many topics. You're going to have a community that discusses the proven things within that field or discusses the cutting edge things within that field. You're going to have a community that is really detailed in the responses, provides long-form information, or is quick and can give really fast responses to issues. And again, there's so many different ones you can use here. This is just a few examples. You can have a community that's fun or serious. You can have a community that's a very high signal to noise ratio, and one that's filled with opinions, facts and opinions. And a big part of cutting through and having a community that explodes to life is figuring out where on this scale you're going to be. And when we're announcing a community, when we're trying to get a community off the ground, when we're trying to figure out how we're going to position the community and get people to participate, we think about what is the word, what is the thing, what is the value that people are going to get from this community? Because there's definitely some where having quick responses, good quick responses, is what they want. A lot of the support communities, that's all they want, quick responses to frustrations they have today. But it's often a community of practice, for example, we're discussing either the cutting edge or what's proven within the field. Those are the things that most resonate with the audience. Or it can be having a community that's focused on a really specific thing. Two of the clients I'm working with now have a community that's focused on a really specific niche, or niche if you're in the USA, a really specific niche. And others try to be the most comprehensive in their sector, covering all of the issues. The reason why a lot of the communities struggle and don't have the level of engagement that they want is they haven't really figured out where they're going to be in this. And when we're communicating any message about a community, we always try to communicate it in the most persuasive way possible. Take, for example, SAP, a client of ours. We were working with them when they did this. When they relaunched their online community, this was what the messaging was. And by the way, communications covers what's on the website, the copy, everything else. What do you think about this messaging here? Just put your answer in the chat. What do you think about a response like this? Functional? Okay, let me change the question. I don't care what you think about it. How do you feel about it? How do you feel? If you read this, how do you feel? If you're a member of the SAP online community, and by the way, if any of you who I'm using as an example happen to be here today, I'm sorry, I just need examples. How do you feel? Generic, easy on the eye, confused, I don't feel that welcomed, it's commanding. What's missing? Think about the messages that persuade you to take action. What's missing? Yes, the why. Why would you do any of these things? Like, people that have been participating in the community, do they really care about logging on by clicking on the avatar, the profile photo? Do they really not know they can ask a question? Do they really not know they can write blog posts? Do they want to find and follow tags? Is this a persuasive message? Is this a message that people are going to remember within that community? Think about the emotional appeal. Think about the emotional appeal that we need from something like this. What is the more persuasive message that we can have here? Think about how we can make this more persuasive. If you're launching a new community, honestly, no one cares. I mean, I don't mean that to be rude, but people don't care. They care about if they can be part of an exclusive elite group. They care about if they can get answers to questions quicker than ever before. They care about if this is a place that's going to cover the comprehensive one-stop shop for the topic. They care about these kinds of things. And too often we get caught up in the functional side instead of thinking about the persuasive side. What is that one powerful persuasive message that we're going to have here? We have to focus, really chisel down to the core thing. Forget about all the things that we want to say and focus simply on what members want to hear. And by the way, if you are announcing anything, avoid cliches as much as you possibly can. Cliches, especially corporate speak, tends to do far more harm than good. If we think about a message like this, this is a real world example. A client was about to use a message just like this. What do you notice about a message like this? This is the messaging that they're going to use. What do you think about it? Are there any cliches in here? I'm going to speed it up just a little bit because I know we're short time. How many cliches can you spot? Lots of cliches. Yes, it's generic, can be applied. If we look at all the cliches in here, I mean, exclusive group, dedicated, empowering leaders, world-class expertise. I'm falling asleep just reading these responses. So what we tried to do is make it more specific and more persuasive and more memorable at that time, which is a private place to solve your toughest problems. No, that doesn't cover every functional thing the community can do. It doesn't cover all of the things that, all of the benefits of being a part of the community. But I think that we can agree that something like this, it cuts through the, I don't know, it cuts through the mustard or whatever a lot quicker than having this big sort of appeal here. A private place to solve your toughest problems. When people think of this community, they're not going to remember an exclusive group dedicated to empowering leaders, blah, blah, blah. I want them to remember a private place to solve their toughest problems. Another thing to think about is the argument dilution effect. And the argument dilution effect works like this. Think about the example on the left. This is this community. Oops, there's a type in there. Sorry about that. This community is where the top experts share the best advice. And then think about the one on the right. This community is where the top experts share their best advice. All members also get a free strike box and a $10 Amazon gift card. Which is more persuasive to you? Which of these do you think is more persuasive? We know that rationally, it's good to have extra stuff, right? I mean, the choice between getting something and not getting something is good. But the first one just feels like more persuasive. Why is that? Why is it more persuasive? It's because when we include weak messages alongside strong messages, we undermine the strong ones. And we have to be really careful on these things, because the more messages that we include, the more we undermine the actual things that we want people to remember. Let's try a real experiment. And by the way, be really careful. This happens all the time. We have these really strong messages and then we undermine it with weak ones. Let's try an experiment. At the very start of this session today, there were 6 things that I offered I would give you at the end of this session. What were they? Let's see if this works or if it blows up in my face. Free chapter of my book chapter. Exactly. Everyone can remember the book chapter, but there were 6 things there and people only remembered 1 or 2. And sure, you can jump in here, but most people just can't remember that much information. And so what we try to do is really narrow things to a couple of very specific, very key things, because people don't have the ability to remember more than that. And when you put like weak things alongside strong things, you undermine the strong things. So try to avoid doing that. So let's start putting all this together into some examples in the couple of minutes we have left. Look at this announcement here. This is one that I caught just the other day. What do you think about this? What do you notice? What would you improve? And Serena, if you give me an extra 2 or 3 minutes, I can wrap this up just after the next slide.
No problem, Rich. Thank you very much.
So what do you notice about this here? Is this good or bad? Really think about how you would feel if you received this. It's very long for sure. Too long. Think about how you would feel. Remember, to be persuasive, you have to target the emotions of the audience. What is persuasive here? It's not bad, is it? Like, it's not awful. Like, it's okay, but it kind of feels a little bit impersonal, I think. It doesn't really generate the kind of excitement. It's got the right things that are in place, but it's missing the emotion. Given your valuable contributions, well, what are they? You could send that to anybody. So if you were to start with the proposition, as Toby is saying here, what would you change? Like specifically, what would you write? Again, I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot here, so feel free to participate or not participate, but what would you put here? It's a bit flat, not exciting. There's no hook to catch them. Yeah, I agree, there's no hook. So let me challenge you. What would be your hook? You don't need to know much else about the community, but what words would you use? Let's be more specific. Yeah, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Bizwayita. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Number of contributions, how did it impact? Why are we getting in touch with you. Yep. The big offer, the benefit of being a founder member. Yeah, the big offer. You got to target the emotions with someone like this. I mean, the emotions of starting something that's completely new that no one has experienced before. The emotion of being a founder member, being able to guide the development of this new community from scratch. If it's exclusivity, then talk about the other people that they might be able to connect with and how only someone like them can be a part of the community. Having a big influence, yes. Think about the emotion side of this. Because very often we have things like, it's like the pieces are in place, but it's not quite, it's just missing that thing, that emotion. And when we target that emotion in a very authentic way, we are a lot more successful. Let's try just one more example before I wrap things up. So I think a year or so ago, a community that we worked on, actually, I think Darren, you might have worked on this when you worked with us, was relaunched, and to side by side. Think about this messaging here. What do you think about it? They're relaunching an online community. What do you think about this messaging here? How do you think or how do you feel about this? And again, I'm sorry if the person that wrote this is attending live. I don't mean to pick on anybody at all. Just real world examples work better than ones I make up. We're going to have to be a little bit quick. Members were heard. They took action on their survey. I'm willing to bet that most people, they didn't read the rest of this message after the second paragraph or so. I think the problem with this is that they talked about what they want to say instead of what people want to hear. And I think to them, it's really exciting that they're launching a new online community or they're relaunching an online community, but I don't think it really grips the audience. What's in it for the members? What's in it for them? What is the emotion? Why should they check out the community? The big appeal seems to be way at the bottom, that side by side will give them everything that they already have and then potentially more things. That's not a major hook. It's not a terrible message. It just feels like one that's not going to achieve any particular goal. It doesn't feel like it's going to increase the level of engagement or participation. It feels like it's not really going to hit that very emotional level. Like Amanda is saying here, it's exciting news for them that they're launching a community. Is it really exciting news for the audience? If they were to chisel down this message to the one single hook that they're going to hang everything else upon, what is that going to be? And that's where I think we have to be at today. So I'm going to wrap things up because we're out of time. Please, if you ever need help with your community, you're welcome to sign up for our training courses. We've worked with a whole number of online communities, Apple, Facebook, Google, SAP, HP, a whole range of them at this point. Also, really exciting news. I have my first published book out soon, coming out on the 7th of May. You can, if you're in the UK, you can pre-order it now. I think in the USA, you can pre-order it now as well. So please go ahead and do that. Yeah, thank you so much. Like, it's really, what makes this book different, I think, is that it's not going to focus on the big strategy of communities, any of those things. It's going to go into the skills side. It's going to go really deep into the very practical skills of how we develop a community. So please buy this book. It's published by Pearson in the UK and I think around the world. So please do go ahead and purchase the book. And you can get all the free stuff I offered at cmx.feedme.com, even the things that you didn't remember. I don't know if Serena wants to jump in here. I know we're 1 or 2 minutes over time, but thank you so much. I really hope you enjoyed the session. I really hope you found it quite useful, and I hope it helps you develop the communities that you're working on. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much, Rich. That's incredible. Really, really appreciate your time today and taking us through so many practical examples on how we can look at engagement and think about what principles might help us to take our engagement and communication to the next level. Really do appreciate that. So Michelle, our co-host, is also here at the moment. So I'm just checking to see if she's able to rejoin us and to talk through. I think Michelle might be joining us in a second. So yes, so we just wanted to have a couple of seconds just to talk to you about CMX London and what's coming next. Hopefully after today's session, you really enjoyed it and you want to come along to other CMX London events in the future. So I'll hand over to Michelle to tell us more.
Thanks, Serena, and thanks, Richard. I just can't share my screen, so.
Oh, let me close down my. Sorry about that.
Oh, thank you. Let me just quickly. There we go. I just wanted to share what we're doing for the next event. I've just dropped the link in the chat as well, so you can sign up when you're ready. But it is our 2-year anniversary. And it is on the 27th of May at 1 p.m. We're doing something a little bit different. There's no guest speakers, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So new or old members, everyone is welcome. And yeah, it's 45 minutes, so quick enough in your lunch break. If you want to have fun, we're going to be sharing some community stories over the last 2 years. We're going to test your community knowledge. And we're going to be doing a few networking sessions, so you'll get to interact with other community managers as well with a few icebreaker questions, and there'll be prizes. So make sure you come along.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Richard. It is incredible, really, really practical session. So many great comments in the chat, and somebody on Twitter was taking notes and very excited as well. So we will be having the recording available soon. There will be a post-event email with further information, including the resources that which mentioned earlier. So that will be coming. So please do. There is a survey as well. So tell us how you think the session went and what you'd like to see in CMX London sessions in the future. Absolute pleasure. We've peaked. What can I say? This is brilliant. So thanks so much for today, everybody. Real pleasure to see you all here. Hopefully you've learned something new. But yeah, hopefully see you again soon. So we'll be closing the session down shortly.
Thanks
everyone.